Everybody, we're in.
Doing great, doing great.
Okay. All
Doing
right.
good. Can you hear me?
I
Okay,
can hear you. I can hear you.
great.
Morgan, we good? We
Yep,
got
we're
you.
good.
Okay. Right on. So, congratulations, Morgan.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes. Yes. So happily married as of how many days now?
Um, I haven't quite counted the days,
Yesterday? No.
but it's been going on 3 weeks.
Okay. Right on. Right on. Well, I tell you, you have a whole lot to look forward to. I've been in it for 26 years, and it's been beautiful, and so
That's awesome.
it's something to look forward to. Well, I thank you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of the town hall. I know what's obvious is in terms of the election, Rev. We got two Revs, so I better say Reverend Tony, okay, and Reverend Hawkins. But I'm thinking, Reverend Tony, let's talk about we have Morgan here, and this whole Black Lives Matter, the peace, the rallies, and all those things, the protesting. It would be, I think, to get your perspective, Morgan, in terms of just what's next, what's the work. There's been a lot of pain points. There's been a lot of awakening in terms of just to some degree of disruption. What's next?
So I think first, before we have that conversation about what's next, you need to understand why we're here, period.
Okay.
So like the Black Lives Matter movement began in response to George Zimmerman murdering a young kid that was carrying a pack of Skittles walking on his way home. And he had no right to kill this young Black boy. And you see this hashtag start on social media, and it becomes a rallying cry of both Black grief, collective Black grief, as well as a rallying call for having conversations about what does collective action look like nationally and locally when we're looking at policing reform and criminal justice reform. And you don't really see much happen from that point, and I believe it was in 2013, to about a year later when Michael Brown was murdered by Darren Wilson. And when Michael Brown was murdered, Ferguson burned. And it was it's actually what activated me. It was my wake up point, because I thought that I could live my own life and continue working in corporate America, work my way up. I can work within all these systems and try to change them for the better. And somebody else will do all the other activism and advocacy work, and that somebody else will handle that, right? And then I realized that they have absolutely no interest in seeing us as full, complete human beings. Because at the end of the day, when I get in my car, I'm still a Black person driving. At the end of the day, I am still a Black woman that's walking around her house or going to sleep or carrying some candy while I'm walking around my neighborhood, or driving to and from a job interview, or all of the other situations since Michael Brown that we have seen Black people murdered on camera.
Right.
And so what you see in May happen is a resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement that first activated me is now activating a new generation. The Generation Z, which was in middle school and elementary school when I was a kid, and not even that long ago. That was in middle school and high school when Michael Brown was murdered, are now adults. And they are seeing what happened when that cop, for almost 9 minutes, knelt on that man's neck. Yeah. And they're seeing what happened when peaceful protesters in every major city in the United States gathered together to say that this killing was wrong because we all watched it on video and we could all agree that it was wrong. They gathered in public spaces peacefully and were targeted violently by police.
Right.
Consistently. And so when we're looking at what's next, the first thing that we need to address is the rampant civil rights and human rights violations that have continued to happen since then.
Right.
Because we have, even in Omaha, we have protesters that are being targeted by police. We have the police that are literally stalking active protesters. They are following them around, they're harassing them, they're creating fake social media accounts so that they can try to track protesters. They are detaining them unlawfully. They are beating them unlawfully on camera. And they're continuing to do this because there has been no repercussions for their actions. And the first thing that we need to do is to create repercussions for their actions.
Right.
Period. So what we're talking about when it comes to creating actionable steps for people to engage and work, it's recognizing that there are advocacy pieces, there's activism pieces, and there's community pieces. We need to have a community structure where we can have real conversations about what Black liberation looks like for all Black people, not just a handful of Black people. Because we're not just talking about like white cisgender people, we're not talking about Black cisgender people, we're not talking about heterosexual people, we're not talking about all of these different identities, we're talking about everyone, regardless of what identities they carry. Because Black liberation only happens when we're bringing all of us along, period.
So
and
Morgan,
then on top of that, we're looking at what does that look like within our own spaces, and then how can we have those conversations past that point so that we can get that actual liberation. So that means public policy, that means representation, that means creating spaces for us to be able to have economic and social power. And so how do we create economic and social power? By financial literacy, by encouraging Black business growth, encouraging education, and all these pieces. So
right.
That's what the movement is. That's the piece of the movement that's not covered on the media. And that's the work that's happening on the ground. So the beautiful part, to your point earlier, is that there's a space for everybody in that work, even if you don't necessarily identify as a BLM activist, which a lot of people I know don't. If you're working for Black liberation, then you're about the same things that we're about. Period.
So Morgan, you said a lot of great stuff there, a lot of things that I think we need to expound upon. But before I divert us back to that, a lot of people don't know all of the great work that you do. Of course, you're listed as an advocate and as an activist. Tell us a little bit more about who you are and why you're in this space and what it is that you're personally doing to move us along.
Yeah. Well, I am an Omaha native, so I grew up here. I went to Bellevue West High School, graduated from Bellevue West, graduated from UNL with a degree in communications, Black studies, and Spanish. And while I was going for my degree, I was working in corporate America. So I was working in marketing for a big Fortune company here. And throughout my time there, I looked around me and I saw situations where, to be frank, the white power structure of corporate America was even steeped in Black spaces that were created to give us a break from the white power structures of corporate America. And I looked at the people that I respected and I admired, and I saw how the world around them and the worlds that they operated in made them small and made them less than what they should be. And so I left corporate America. I started my own consulting business doing inclusive communications consulting, specifically looking at diversity and inclusion training, and how can we communicate messages more effectively, thinking intentionally of all of the people that are traditionally alienated or marginalized within our society. and helping companies and nonprofits be able to communicate that. And so I've been doing that work on and off for 5 years now. And since then, I've learned a lot. I've been able to work with some really great organizations here in the Omaha area. But one of the most amazing things that I had the privilege of doing is through that work, I connected with activists and advocates that have been doing the work for 5 days and doing the work for 50 years, all locally. And I got to meet these people and figure out what activism looked like for them, what advocacy looked like for them, and how we can build collective liberation for marginalized populations intentionally by doing disruptive work.
Right. So in disrupting, so how do we bring together the youth and different races? When we talk about Black liberation, just to be clear, Black liberation is not exclusive to Black people or African Americans. Is that correct? Is that an
No.
accurate or fake? So therefore,
I mean, Black liberation is for Black people. Period. So we're talking about Black liberation. We're talking about liberation of Black people.
Right. Black liberation liberates Black people. The black people benefit from it, but it is not exclusive to Black people doing the work. Is that correct?
I mean, yes, other people, if you're talking about the actual work itself. So like, for example, a protest or a rally or lobbying or all that other work, other people can participate in that work because Black liberation is going to benefit everyone, but it's specifically targeted and centering Black people.
Right, and I think that's where I'm trying to get to, is that while yet the Black liberation is a movement, is an effort to liberate Blacks, it is not exclusive in terms of getting the work done. All races can come together to bring about Black liberation. We can all use our various platforms. Brian Cruz could use his platform and use his interests and his efforts and resources to help promote Black liberation. Clearly, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
so and the reason why I make it a point, Tim, and you definitely can spin off on this, is that in order for the work to get done, when we look at what happened in the 60s, when we look at, civil rights and what have you, it was not only Blacks that spoke up and spoke out. There were other races. When you look at Morgan, you referenced earlier about the George Zimmerman situation and what have you. It was that particular incident, that horrifying, horrific incident, where we saw people from around the world, literally of various nationalities, different countries, different ethnic groups, genders and age groups, and so on and so forth. I mean, when you see the Amish come out of their exclusive communities and they're standing with Black Lives Matter signs, that lets you know that something is happening, when other people come from other races and other communities.
Yeah, so and I think you're also talking about, I want to be clear, George Zimmerman, and this is also for the people that are attending, George Zimmerman was the white man that murdered Trayvon Martin.
Did I say George Zimmerman? I meant George Floyd.
Yeah,
my
George
apologies.
Floyd is the most recent murder by,
right.
Sorry.
Yeah, my apologies. A slip of the tongue. Right. So you referenced George Zimmerman, but we're, of course, what I'm talking about is George Floyd here, is what caused the world to take note and to pay attention and to come out and engage in peaceful protests and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Tim, I think you were about to say something.
I was just going to say, in terms of just our other two panelists, I'm most definitely glad we're not doing a debate where we have to have equal time, because Morgan, you winning big time right now as far as the time. But I mean, in terms of just Pastor Hawkins, Brian, in terms of just initially from this discussion, do you want to weigh in on do you have any thoughts before we move on to the next subject?
I'll let Brian Cruz go first.
You're going to yield right away, huh?
The only thing I guess I would say is coming at it from a perspective of elections or of voting. Our office tries to make voting accessible to all parts of the county or the city equally. and we are mindful of perhaps transportation issues and things of that nature. With the ballot boxes we have in East Omaha, and we've installed more to help with that. We try, when COVID hit, it was extremely, extremely important to me to keep neighborhood polling places. I absolutely was not going to go to vote centers like we saw in other major cities where it was hard or in books to get there if they wanted to vote in person, not to mention the health issues. And when we got our new location here, it was critical. I mean, it was an absolute must that we were on a bus route here. And not only for the voters, but we actually have several temporary employees who ride the bus to work here every day from different parts of the city. So, I am mindful. We are mindful of those things in different parts of the city, and we do try to be responsive of those. Also, reaching out to different groups in different parts of the city. I've tried to participate in empowerment and in Nona, with you, Tim, with the pastoral groups, New Era Baptist, and some of those different groups to see what the needs or the concerns are.
Now Brian. I mean, it's obvious what's happening in this country, but there's with folks trying to basically discredit the process, the voting process, and really, basically folks saying, hey, really, they don't know if their vote's going to count. And because of just all these messaging that we're getting. So what assurances have you put in place, or systems that are in place to assure people, at least in this Douglas County, that your vote will count? And
Sure.
Talk a little bit about the schedules and things like that.
Sure. So I think one of the big things is, just I feel like the trust we have in Douglas County and in Omaha with all of our community partners. And, we started that 5 years ago when I came into office. And really, I guess I maybe started that inadvertently before that. I worked in the funeral business before that. And I served, all parts of the city with the mortuaries I was at. So I had a working relationship with the folks in North Omaha and South Omaha, even before I took this job. So I think it starts with trust in your election commission, trust in your election officials and the employees that work here. And beyond that, we try to be extremely transparent. We try to ensure voters that we are here to make their votes count. We're not here not to make their votes count. They can go online. They do the by mail balloting. They can go online on our website and they can check to see if their ballot's been accepted, or they can call our office. We work with the nonprofit Civics Nebraska, who will reach to folks whose ballot has been rejected for some reason. And again, by far the biggest reason ballots
Brian,
are rejected.
if I can interrupt
People forget to sign.
I mean, so there's a process in place that they can check, follow up with you guys, and you'll be able to validate if we receive your ballot, and or if there's a problem with your ballot. Now, if there's a problem with their ballot, will they get a chance to correct that, or how does that work?
Absolutely. If there is some problem with their ballot, if it's been rejected for some reason, they can contact our office, and almost all the time they'll have the opportunity to correct that. Now, it does have to be done by 8 p.m. on election night, because that's when ballots, have to be in our possession. Postmarks don't count. But certainly, absolutely. And they can go to our website, votedouglascounty.com, and go under the early voting envelope right on the front page. If they don't have access to the website, they can always call our office at 444-VOTE, and we're happy to look that up for them over the phone and assist them.
I think we're gonna put up on the screen some of that information so folks can. But it was pretty simple. They need to call 444-VOTE,
Right.
and then the website is
votedouglascounty.com.
okay.
And right on the homepage, there's a picture of an envelope, and right when you click on that envelope, it takes you right there to check my voting status. I think it is. I can tell you real quick. Yeah, it says early voting ballot status check once you click on the envelope on the homepage. And you put a little bit of information in, and it'll tell you when your ballot was mailed, when it was received back in our office, and if it's been accepted or rejected. And like I said, literally 99% of the time it's been accepted.
Okay. And so Tony, Reverend Tony, I'll let you have it. I just want to make sure it is October 8th, Thursday. Is there some very important dates out there that just people need to know? For registration, deadlines to get the ballots in, all of that kind of stuff. I believe we have a sheet that we're going to put up, but just I want you to go ahead and reinforce any of that before we move on. Brian?
Oh, did you want? Okay.
Yeah, is there any
the pastor? I'm sorry.
No,
yes.
I'm sorry. Is there any pertinent dates that we need to know?
Yes. So there's one extremely important date, and that is October 23rd, Friday, October 23rd at 6 p.m. It's the last day to request a ballot be mailed to you, and it's the very last day to register to vote for this election, and that has to be done in person. The Friday before that, October 16th, is the last day to register to vote any other way, like online, at a voter registration drive, libraries. I know some of the libraries are open now. The clerk's office downtown has voter registration applications. So Friday, October 16th is the last way to register to vote any way other than in person. But Friday, October 23rd, that's an extremely important date at 6 p.m., is the last day to request a ballot be mailed to you, and the very last day to register to vote in person for this election.
Now, to make sure if you have a ballot that was sent to your home, when should you make sure it is out of your house, and to make sure, what's that timeline to make sure they get it to you?
Sure. So the post office has recommended this year, and we're obviously going along with their recommendation, that it's that Tuesday before the election. So I believe it's Tuesday, October 27th. The post office says you should not mail your ballot, yes, Tuesday, October 27th, more than a week out. Now, I will say we've got about 50,000 ballots already back in our office that people have voted.
Wow.
And we track those, and 85% of those have been returned through one of our 13 drop boxes. So people are by far using our drop boxes around the county as a way to return their ballot. And it is the most direct way between the voter and our office. There's no third party. But again, after October 27th, please use a drop box or bring it to our office and turn it in. Please do not mail it.
So I think that's very important, Brian, that you make that distinction, because a lot of people don't realize, and I know this because I've heard from some of them, those two options, the mail box and those ballot return, those drop boxes. The drop boxes, and so Brian, speak to this if you would, make certain that I am giving accurate information. If they put it in the drop box, they do not need postage. it's going directly to you. If they put it in the mailbox, they do need postage. And it's very important because a lot of people were they were dropping their early request, the green cards, in the mailbox without postage, and it was being sent back to them. If they put it in the drop box, then they don't need postage. So am I accurate with that?
You absolutely are accurate with that. And all of our drop boxes look the same now. They're all stainless steel. There's a picture of them on our website. We replaced them all this year with larger ones and more secure. And so they're much more secure, they're larger. And I think it's worth mentioning that all of our drop boxes have cameras on them.
Okay.
That's good.
They're not all our cameras. Some of them are of the businesses where they have them, but we have the ability to obtain footage, or the police would, in the event something would happen. Now, we empty these every day. Two people of differing parties, so it's a bipartisan team, and it takes two keys to unlock these. And then we check in all the ballots we get, all the mail that we get from those drop boxes. We check in every day.
That's good to know. There's a few things that we want to talk about on that, Brian. I want to get Pastor Hawkins in here, though. So the last thing that I'll say on that is the comfort, because there are a lot of people who are very skeptical, but they've watched the news and seen how mailboxes have been looted and how mail carriers have dumped mail and or ballots in the garbage, as opposed to, getting them where they're supposed to go. And so by you sharing this tonight, hopefully this brings about some sense of calm and peace to individuals who are choosing to do mail-in ballots and or take advantage of those drop boxes. Drop boxes are direct to the commission office. There is no third party. You've already stated that there are two individuals from both parties, and it requires that they do that in sync and in unison so that there is no foul play. All right. So Pastor Hawkins, Pastor Dwayne Hawkins is the senior pastor of the Antioch Baptist Church, South Omaha, here in Omaha, Nebraska. He also is the president of New Era. And so we're happy to have you here tonight, Pastor Hawkins. If you could speak specifically to the importance of the church, the role that the church and the faith community has. We, of course, know that historically, and there's many reasons as to why this is the case, but historically, the Black church has been very instrumental and key when it comes to social justice, civil rights, and those type of things, and of course, voter rights and as well. So can you speak from your perspective as the president of New Era? I believe there's well over 20 churches that are a part of that association. Is that correct?
26.
26 to be exact. So what type of measures, what we of course know that the churches can't, as a nonprofit, cannot, of course, endorse a particular candidate or any of those type of things, but churches can use their voice and use their platform and pulpit to promote and encourage engagement. So can you speak to that for a moment, if you would, please, Pastor Hawkins?
Sure. Thank you, Pastor Tim Clark, and to all of those that are on the panel. I have been a church kid all of my life. I grew up Omaha, born and raised, grew up at Morning Star Baptist Church. And as a boy, my pastor was Z.W. Williams, pastored 40 plus years at the Morning Star Baptist Church. And as a kid, next to my father, the pastor was the most important person that I knew personally in all of my life. He preached to us. He took the time to encourage us. He would call me by name. And really, I didn't know any celebrities growing up. So my pastor was the most important person that I knew outside of my parents. And I say that to highlight the impact that the church has on voters, people that are younger, non-voters. And in my estimation, the impact and the influence of the church is still just as significant today as it was when I was a kid growing up in church. I believe that even though I cannot stand in my pulpit and say, you need to vote for this person, or you need to vote this way on this issue, to use my influence to encourage people to exercise their right to vote is part of my responsibility as a pastor in this community. We just came off of two very successful events in our community where we partnered with other people in our community to provide COVID testing. And a part of providing that COVID testing gave us opportunity to do other things to influence and impact the community. And so we made sure at every testing event, while people were in line to get their testing done, that we provided them information for the census so that they could register for the census, and also voter registration. And then at the second one, not only voter registration, but mail-in ballot applications. And so we served about 760 some odd people at the first event. The second event, about 300 or so. So there's about 1,000 people that came to those events. And the majority of those people received information about the census, received information about voter registration. And the significance of that is, you all just said at the beginning that Brenda Council lost the election by nearly the same number of voter registration packets that we handed out. And so to put that in context, that's impactful. It makes a difference. And so when I see what I see, the presidential debate, we saw a candidate whose response to racism was law and order. We saw a news conference that showed the whole city that a particular party was the party that you need to affiliate with, and they made sure to make it as public as possible, which in my opinion is just an abuse of power, to do something of that nature and to use your influence in that way. And when I see those things, it makes it even more of a sense of urgency that we would use everything at our disposal to encourage people to vote. And the role of the church is just as significant as any other role. And so I'm happy to hear what Brian Cruz said. I'm happy to hear the work that Morgan Freeman is doing, and in opportunities like this to be able to encourage people that the church has a place, has a role, has a purpose to serve as it relates to what happens in our community. And so I'm happy to be a part of that and to use whatever influence that I have, that I've done. And then other things, other voting things in the past. We did some things collectively at the last mayoral election, and just a variety of other opportunities to use the influence of the church to activate people, encourage people, provide transportation, and make sure they have everything that they can to exercise their right to vote.
That's awesome. That is much needed. we definitely appreciate the collective work, not only of New Era, but even other organizations and entities out there that are a coalition of ministers and clergy persons that have worked in concert to bring about change. We're going to need to take a break here in just a few moments and get some, but I want you, Pastor Hawkins and Brian, to please stay with us because on the second half of this, we really want to talk, we want to get into some practical things. And I mean, this is all about moving people to action. And so we want to talk about, specific steps that are needed and necessary to get people engaged and get people involved. Brian, there's some very specific things on this ballot that I think that people need to be aware of. And matter of fact, if you can answer before we go on to break, is there a way that they can look at the ballot beforehand online or somewhere where they can take a look and kind of study it? Is there an option for that?
There is. So if you go to our website, votedouglascounty.com, and right up in the upper left-hand corner, it says find your voting information. And so if you just put a little bit of information in there and then select your address, it'll take you there and it will show you the exact ballot that you will be voting on when you either get your by-mail ballot, come to our office or to the polling place. And it's not just the races, but it's also all of the special issues. Okay. There is also a pamphlet there that kind of explains the ballot initiatives, the 3 gambling and the payday lending as well.
Right. 428,
go ahead and
429.
show the descriptions. I'm sorry.
So we have initiative 428, which is the payday lending. We have 429, 430, and 431, which those initiatives are for specifically for the gaming and gambling, of course. And then there's that proposed amendment number 2, which is very important that people might want to spend some time taking a look at. Before we go to break, we got less than a minute here. Brian, just to be clear, and please correct me if I say anything that is not accurate. But because this is a general election, I think it's important that everyone knows, regardless of what party you're affiliated, whether it's independent, libertarian, Democrat, Republican, everyone gets the same ballot.
That's right.
So as of, so some of you may have gone to the polls before, and the elections, especially locally, and depending on what party you're affiliated with, you may get a different ballot than someone else, or depending on what part of town you live. But with this general election, everyone gets the same ballot and you're voting on the same things. Is that correct?
Yes, on the federal and the state elections. Now, where yes, everybody gets the same ballot. There's no party differentiation. And on the federal and the state elections, now, like for school board and county commissioner and things like that, then that does change because you vote on the people that live in the district that represents you.
Right.
But for president, for Congress, for senator, yes, all of those on what we call the top of the ballot are all the same. It's down ballot races that will change according to where you live. So you can vote for who represents you.
Right. Good stuff. Folk, we appreciate you tuning in. We are at a point we need to take a quick break and pay some bills. We've got some great advertisers and some folk out there doing some wonderful things in the community, and we want you to know all about it. But so we're going to take a quick break. While we're on break, make certain to invite some other folk, tag some people, share on other people's pages and the groups and what have you. Start a watch party. We're on Facebook Live. So let's get this thing cracking. We've got another segment to go, and we've got a lot of ground to cover. So thank you, and please make certain to get some other folk involved. We're going to break.
As a